public hearing about updates to the Grid Resilience Grant Program narrative. My name is Clay Deckert, and I'm a Senior Incentives Analyst assigned to this program. Today's meeting is to specifically review our proposed changes to the program narrative. This is a required step for the annual funding request under our grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy. Today's process is separate from the subgrant opportunity that just opened last week. These edits to the program narrative are connected to future funding and won't change anything under the current opportunity or application process. You'll see that we have several other people from the Oregon Department of Energy with us today to help answer questions. And I'm going to introduce one of them because she's our federal grants officer, and she's been with the program almost the longest. And that is Emily Salmieri, our federal grants officer.
Good morning, everybody. Emily Salmieri here, federal grants officer at Odo. Been here about a year, and happy to help take any questions that come up as Clay goes on here.
Right, and Rob is not joining us, but he helped design the program and stuff, and so he always helps answer questions and is still with the program, but he wasn't able to attend today. And then I threw my name up there just so you can see how it's spelled. All right, for those of you who are new to WebEx, here's a quick guide for some of the features. Attendees are off camera and muted, but we will unmute you if we call on you during the public comment section. You can also see the option to raise your hand on both the right-hand side of your screen and under the participants panel if you click near your name. There's also an option at the bottom of your screen where you can see a visual of a hand in the reactions bar. Please use the chat function to ask questions or make comments. Please send chats to all panelists or to the everyone option so that all Odo staff can see it and help respond. We'll try and get to as many questions in the chat and through raised hands, but we will stick to the 1 hour timeline. And if we don't have time to get to everybody, please make sure and email in your comments, and we'll have that email address posted several times during the presentation today. And do we have anybody, Patricia, anybody on a phone call? Has anybody phoned in?
No.
Okay, thank you. So I will skip the phone-in instructions. Today's hearing is being recorded, and then we will post the recording on our website and a list of attendees also. Just letting everybody know that. A quick introduction to the Oregon Department of Energy, or ODO for short. On this slide, you see our vision, mission, and what we do. Our mission is to help Oregonians make informed decisions and maintain a resilient and affordable energy system. We advance solutions to shape an equitable clean energy transition, protect the environment and public health, and responsibly balance energy needs for current and future generations. Under what we do, you'll see the services we provide and how we achieve our mission. The Grid Resilience Grant Program we're discussing today will help Odo support a resilient and affordable energy system. We have two objectives for our time together today. First, we want to make sure that you understand the reasons for the updates to the program narrative and the connection to Odo's existing grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy. This is our part of an annual request for funding as we work to continue to bring federal dollars to Oregon to help make our electric grid more resilient. Second, we'll outline the changes to the narrative and update you on the status of the program and how these changes to the narrative fit in. We will have time for public comments. Oh, too fast there. We'll have time for public comments. And we also hope people will submit written comments to the program email address. That's listed there, grid.grants@energy.oregon.gov. And we're going to have a deadline for those public comments of the 28th. But that'll also be shown on a later slide as well. For anyone new to this program, I'm going to give a quick summary background. This Grid Resilience Grant Program is funded under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This federal legislation includes $62 billion with a B for the U.S. Department of Energy to deliver a more equitable and clean energy future for the American people by investing in American manufacturing and workers, expanding access to energy efficiency and clean energy for families, communities, and businesses, delivering reliable, clean, and affordable power to more Americans, and building the technologies of tomorrow through clean energy demonstrations. The Grid Resilience Grant Program is just one of the programs that was funded by the IIJA and given to the U.S. Department of Energy for responsibility for running. And this particular program comes out of Section 40101D of this law of the IIJA. The program is outlined by the U.S. Department of Energy is to improve the all hazards resilience of the electric grid against disruptive events, generate the greatest community benefit in reducing the likelihood and consequences of disruptive events, to advance the Department of Energy's equity, environmental, and energy justice priorities, including the Justice 40 initiative, and to invest in America's workforce. And then we have the link here in these slides, which will of course be posted later with the recording of the presentation. But that shows where you can get to the information, specific information about the program and how Oregon and the Oregon Department of Energy applied for this grant. So here's a summary of the funding timeline of the program so far. ODO was awarded a grant agreement in June of last year, and that included 2 years of the expected 5 years of funding. These first 2 years of funds are now available under the opportunity that opened last week, with applications due by June 14th. Our agreement with the United States Department of Energy includes a process for an annual funding allocation request. US DOE issued an amendment to the administrative and legal requirements document, which set a deadline in April for us to submit ODO's request for the fiscal year 2024 funds. The request process includes the requirement for this public hearing because we have proposed changes to the program narrative. This is a screenshot of the top page of the narrative document showing our proposed edits. This document is posted on our program website in the stakeholder engagement section under the notice for this public hearing. New text is shown in red underlined text, and deleted text is shown with red and strike-throughs. Most of the changes were minor to make the text clearer by removing redundant and other unnecessary wording and to remove language that referred unnecessarily to a specific timeline, such as during the first year of the program and things like that. We've just administratively made edits to make the narrative more generic across the life of the program. I'm not going to review the entire 12-page document today, so if you have not had time to review the change document that's posted, please do so and email us with questions and comments by March 28th. I'll highlight some of the specific changes. The key point we want you to take away today is that there are no major changes from the current narrative and no effect on the current opportunity round that just opened. In a couple of places, we've strengthened the language of the project metrics we want to see in project details under our objectives. For the metrics related to mitigating grid disruptions, we originally asked for data asking simply for the number of customers affected by the frequency and duration of grid disruptions. We added in the requirement to include the percentage of customers affected to give the application reviewers a better picture of the expected results of the project in relation to the entire grid or the entire services of that particular utility that's proposing the project. So instead of number, we went to number and percentage. Another another change. Most of the metrics under Objective 3, which covers our community benefits, are currently worded to measure by awarded projects. And so the first two objectives were specific to projects, and then we did the third objective saying that we were going to measure it by all the projects awarded, and we wanted them to be consistent. So we changed the wording to talk about, to be project specific. And then we also reworded it so that the metrics more closely match the language from the U.S. Department of Energy's guidance for metrics. And that metrics guidance is available on their website too for this program. And there's the listed example of the current and the change. And then the sort of the biggest change we did, the current narrative had some non-definitive language stating that we anticipate establishing 2 carve-outs, also known as set-asides. But as we developed the program and the opportunity announcement and started working on how we were going to review the applications, we found that we could not equitably or confidently measure the percentage of funds being spent in disadvantaged communities over the lifetime of a project from simply looking at the estimates for proposed projects at the time of the application. And so even though we anticipated establishing this carve-out, we never did. And that information, the information about the benefits to disadvantaged communities will only become clear as projects get implemented and actual funds get spent. So we removed that language for the Justice 40 carve-out because we never did build it into the program. The U.S. Department of Energy will measure the Justice 40 benefits from data provided during reporting from the awarded projects, looking at where and how the funds were spent. And then during the application review, our objectives and metrics will allow us to rank and compare projects based on their estimated benefits to disadvantaged communities and overall community benefits provided. We then are able to prioritize projects for selection for award that demonstrate the greatest environmental justice community benefits paired with the greatest grid disruption and mitigation benefits. So that's what it currently looks like. And then this is, after we cleaned it up, this is what the new funding distribution will look like. What remains, you'll see, is the carve out of 40% for small utilities. And here it's actually just a repeat because this was introduced and explained earlier on page 4 of the narrative. Just a quick background there, then the law required for Oregon, it would end up being a 25% carve out for small utilities based on percentage of customers. But in speaking with stakeholders and looking at the unique nature of the small utilities in Oregon, it was decided to up that to a 40% carve out for the small utilities. So this is the last sample of the changes we made. Before we open it up to public comments, I'll quickly discuss the next steps for completing these narrative changes and other program updates. For our next steps, we intend to review public comments received to integrate into the final changes of the program narrative. We must submit our fiscal year 2024 funding request along with our edited, updated narrative to the Department of Energy no later than April 17th. Once approved by the U.S. Department of Energy, we will post the final updated narrative and the updated program budget on the program website. Please continue to follow our progress by checking the website and subscribing to email notices. As we review the program design and implementation and gather lessons learned through the first opportunity that just opened up and that will continue through the spring and summer and into fall, we will consider narrative changes again in about a year from now for the fiscal year 2025 funding request. All right, now we've reached the time for public comments. We appreciate the comments that we've already seen in the chat, or if we have any, I shouldn't get ahead of myself. I can't see the chat the way I have my screen set up. I'm going to end the slide, or I'm going to pause the slideshow right now. But I'll just go through the points on the slide to type your questions into the chat window. Please introduce yourself when we call on you, and give us your name and your affiliation. We don't have a whole bunch of attendees, but we still want to make sure there's time for everybody. So please pay attention to that. And then, as always, you can send in comments up until March 28th to the grid.grants@energy.oregon.gov email address. So I'm going to end the slideshow so I can see everybody a little bit better.
Clay, there are currently no comments in the chat.
Okay, thank
Not yet.
you. Okay, well, sometimes I feel like we've done a good job if I've answered everybody's questions ahead of time. And there aren't any questions or comments now. We'll stay here for a few minutes just in case somebody wants to chime in. I don't see any raised hands or comments in the chat. So we can also end this in a minute or two if there aren't any comments or questions at this time. So we'll just hang out for another minute, and then I will put up the email one last time, and make sure that you all know how to get in touch one last time with us. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate those that have taken time out of their day to come and listen to this. And again, please, by the end of the day, so 5 p.m. on March 28th, if you have a comment for us, please send it to grid.grants@energy.oregon.gov. I'm also with the program if you are going to be a first round applicant, or if you're preparing for later rounds and you just want to know more about the program and preparing your application, please email that same email address, and I'll respond, and we can set up a meeting. We can talk about it. We also are working on planning for some future public webinars just to describe the application process. Oh, hold on one moment. I hear we have a chat question. So let me get to that, please.
Yeah, Clay, Joseph was just confirming that April 17th is when the funding request deadline is occurring, and not the date that we're submitting the changes. I clarified to him, just in case anybody else is hanging out and listening, that both the amended narrative is required to be submitted with the funding request at that time.
Okay, thank you. All right, and that's it. We'll end it right here. Thank you very much for coming, everybody.